and welcome to SydneyAlt.net January, the first one for 2026. So stick a comment in just to show that we do have some audience and people listening. I see Lord Teaspoon has already said hello, anybody out there. So sorry we started a little bit late, but we're here now. I'm just waiting for some audience numbers to come through to make sure we've got someone to talk to. All right, very good. We've got George here as well. That's cool. All right, so I'm really excited to have Damien on the show today. So it's been a long history actually between us, with quite a break in the middle. But Damien you founded like the Brisbane Alt.net, right? Originally?
No, but I moved there for some of the early days of it, I think.
So yeah, we were in touch on the early days of alt.net when it was all like the Castle project and all the non-Microsoft time, long before Microsoft bought GitHub and decided they wanted to
turn it into AI.
And then ended up in Copilot or whatever else. But this was long time back when Microsoft was very separate from the open source community and wanted to stay that way. But and then Damien came and spoke at twice, I think, at the Sydney Alt.net in person.
2008 and 2009, which was my first meetup talk ever, I think. It was 2008. Cool. So yeah.
This was at the very start in the ThoughtWorks office, long time ago. And then probably should talk to Damien as CTO and architect and consultant and other things, but with the personal history out of the way. So the other thing I'm tripped about is the topic, right? Because I'm quite interested in sailing, as you can see from the t-shirt and the background picture, which is actually a boat that I do own in the background there, and was sailing at that point. But Damien's going to talk about much bigger races and much bigger boats, the Sydney to Hobart. So I think we've probably got everyone coming on in now at 7:05. We've also got Francis with us today, and he'll be asking some questions too. So today the format is a interview. So Damien's will be answering everyone's questions and also riffing on the architecture and all about the system and his experience doing it for 23 years, which is quite an epic length of time. Now,
is it long service leave?
Oh yeah, no long service leave for consultants.
No. I've had one Christmas off, but we'll get into that.
Wow, yes.
That's 2020. Christmas 2020 was the first Christmas I'd had off in 20 years.
Oh wow. So true commitment there. So we also have we have multiple things to give away. We've got the JetBrains licenses as usual. We've got 2 of those to give away, and we have 2 programmable tickets to give away, which is quite a fun conference. I didn't mention that Damien is the director of YOW conference as well, which is a cool conference which I went to in December, and in fact caught up with Damien there, and that's probably why we're having this session today. But yeah, Damien's in charge of that conference, which I do highly recommend. But I heard the sad news, it's not in Sydney, only in Melbourne. This
Brisbane.
Year. And Brisbane.
Melbourne and Brisbane. So, but if you would like to come for Sydney people, we will give you a discount on the Melbourne conference. We have decided. But yeah, watch this space.
Sounds good. So we don't have any tickets to give away for YOW at this point, but we do have tickets for Programmable, which is in March, which is it's a smaller conference, and it's been running a few years, but it's getting quite good. Francis and I went last year and the year before, but especially the last year had some good speakers and good topics and lots of people to talk to. So we recommend it, and it's just the one day, and we have 2 free tickets to give away. So stay tuned to the end, and I'll ask you some questions where you can, if you answer them correctly, you'll get one of those tickets. All right. So maybe without more of my talking, we better get over to Damien and get with the real view of the show. I guess we don't need the screen as yet, Damien.
No, not yet. We'll get into that.
Fair enough. All right, so we've made up some questions, but Damien's got lots to tell us and some architecture diagrams and other things to switch to. But please feel free to comment in the chat when you've got any questions, and as usual, I'll just surface them, right, and put them to Damien when it's an appropriate time. So definitely keep the questions coming.
Yes, this is not a prepared presentation. I've got some architecture sketches, but I think this would be more fun as a very open thing.
Yeah, so feel free to take it wherever you want, guys. So we just had a simple start, like, very simple in case you live under a rock. Yes, the Sydney to Hobart is a very major yacht race. Do you want to say more about it, Damien?
No, I mean, so we just had the 80th year of the race. It started in 1945. Initially, it was something like 7 or 8 yachts, and I suspect it was a bunch of guys at the pub going, on after Christmas, let's sail to Tasmania, and just kind of picked up steam from that. And now it's watched all over the world. Rolex have been a sponsor for a long time. It was for a period of time, and I don't know if this is still the case, but the sort of largest sporting event in the Southern Hemisphere from a viewership point of view. I don't know if that is still accurate, but it's kind of a big deal. In Australia on Boxing Day, you either watch the cricket or you watch the Sydney and Hobart, or you flick between the both. And over the last few years, people sit on the couch watching the cricket on TV and keeping an eye on the race on their phone. So it's interesting. First stat of the thing, our mobile traffic makes up something like 80% of the traffic now, which is pretty huge.
Well, I was looking on my phone actually for it, just looking to the mobile traffic on it. But yeah, it's one of the major ones in the world, right, that people qualify for and bring in their, I don't know how many $1 million, $100 million huge boats, and yeah, it's certainly a huge thing in the sailing community. And a lot of people look at it. Probably Damien knows exactly how many people look at it. Is it scale wise? How many visitors do you get?
This it's got a relatively predictable traffic peak. Actually, the first hour and a half it's on TV, and a lot of people will just watch it on TV, and just kind of the traffic will peak up and just kind of sit there fairly flat. And then at the end of the hour long, or the sort of 90-minute broadcast starts half an hour before the race. And after the first hour of the race, they always finish the TV broadcast with, go onto the website and look at the yacht tracker. And that's the moment of truth every year. The minute they put it up on the screen, I watch like Google Analytics and it just goes bang. It's by today's standard, it's not hyperscaling, but there are tens of thousands of users, hitting the site at any given time. And then it will stay fairly high until the sort of big, well-known boats finish. And then it will drop right down after that. If it's a close finish, it will get bigger than the start. The record was set in 2017 and people were just smashing it. It was hectic. And that was the record that was set. It was sort of a day and 4 hours, or a day and 5 hours after it started, and I thought I was in the clear. And I actually went to the cricket with my son, and on the way it was like, this is going to be the closest finish and fastest finish. And I was literally in the car on the way to the cricket with a laptop on my lap. I wasn't driving, obviously, but like scaling up service, provisioning infrastructure. And then as I got to the Gabba, I was in Queensland, to get to the cricket, it's just a mobile black spot when there's that many people there. And I'm like, well, I'm here now, and it is what it is. And that worked. But yeah, typically once those big super maxi yachts have finished, the traffic will then die down. The sailing community are a lot more interested in the smaller yachts that win on the handicap. There's lots of categories in the race, and the sailing community care about the handicap winner. The general public cares about the big multi-million-dollar super maxi yachts. So once they've finished, it does die off, but it stays, kicks around for a few days.
Yeah, some of the slower ones take quite a long time to get there, right?
Yes, and this year would have been the slowest race as well. The last yacht was scheduled to finish on the 3rd of January, but he gave up, got to Flinders Island and went, I want a cold shower or a hot shower and a beer. So he docked and got towed home, I think. So yes, I have actually no background in yacht racing though. I've just picked up bits and pieces along the way. I've never actually been anywhere near any of the yachts.
This does take us to
which is probably a good segue to the first question.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, so how did you get involved in the Sydney to Hobart yacht race and the website?
So I worked for in the early 2000s, in the sort of dot-com boom in Sydney, there was a digital agency called Massive Interactive, and they were one of the bigger agencies of that era. And they won the contract to develop the website for the Sydney to Hobart in 2002. And they did it, and it was one of those classic agency site launches where everything was a little bit half finished. And it hit Boxing Day, and the whole thing came crashing down in a massive smoky heap.
I've been a consultant trying to bail out an agency in the past when that
right. Yeah, it's the quality of work is not. I mean, look, it wasn't bad, but was not up to the task, and it fell apart spectacularly. And I was brought on the next February to kind of finish it, set it up to do some other races. So what people don't know is the site is run by the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia. And they run a number of other races through the year. And so they wanted it finished off and being able to run for a number of other races. And obviously up to the scale. So some really fun things happened. I mean, it all fell apart. So what they did on the day of the race was set up a bunch of reverse proxies. I don't remember, anybody remembers Squid proxy? You are aging yourself if you remember Squid.
Already got the white in the beard.
Yeah, that's right. I used to have hair before this. So they set up a bunch of Squid proxies on there. Now, the problem with that was on the site, there was a clock to sort of signify the race time. And it was built in Flash, for those who remember Flash. And the way you interacted with Flash was you put data in the HTML parameter tags of your Flash. You had a Flash applet tag, and you could put data in the parameter tags. So they put a Squid proxy in front of it, which cached all the HTML, which let the site stay up. However, that also cached the starting parameters of the clock, which was the time, which meant you've got a Rolex branded website and the time was wrong. And Rolex would rather have no website than the website with a wrong time. So that didn't work. There were a host of other problems. But anyway, I came on board the next year to kind of get it going. And I worked on it with Massive for several years after that. I think I left in 2006. And we did a bunch of cool stuff. We were the first live sporting event to use Google Earth. So when Google bought Earth and released it to the public, there was a big blog with all the cool stuff that people were doing on Google Earth. And 3 days before the race, we realized that we could server-side render the KML and put live yachts on Google Earth. We were the first people to do that. So we did a lot of cool stuff. I left that company in 2006. And what happened was Massive realized they weren't going to be able to find anybody else that was prepared to work over Christmas that could handle scale, all-nighters, late-night phone calls, video streaming, audio streaming, troubleshooting, a whole bunch of other stuff. There's a lot of moving parts. And they realized they couldn't hire somebody that was going to be able to do that at a price that they were prepared to pay. at that point, they'd won a whole bunch of design and innovation awards for the website. And so they fired the yacht club as a client.
Ooh.
And the yacht club came to me and said, look, do you want to do this freelance? And at first I said no. And they took it to another agency and it went horribly wrong. And I found myself on the phone to the CEO on Boxing Day saying, do you want me to jump in and help? And I've sort of had it freelance ever since. So that's, and it's one of those things that over the years, you know, the various circumstances, I'm like, well, maybe I should give it up. And then I'm like, I realized that I'm kind of attached to it, and I would hate to see anybody else take it over and have it go wrong again. So we have a pretty good working relationship, like myself and the club. I have a lot of like sort of free license to, like, I had nobody calling the shots about how I build it, essentially, which was good for me when I went on to work in consultancies where I wasn't always on the tools. This was a great way for me to stay current with architecture and try things out because they trusted me and they would let me do it. So it's, you know, as a consultant, sometimes you'll be pitching an idea and they're like, well, that's all well and good. You're a consultant. You don't have an, like, I've got my hands dirty, like, trust me. So it's been good. It's been good for that. So
We got a question from Stephen. He was asking who will do it after you. Presumably
that is
you don't want to do it anymore. You want to go
that
away.
is an excellent question. Yes. I think they're hoping that I'd never die and I will keep doing it forever. So it is a really good question. The bus factor on this is quite high. I have handed over keys and knowledge to a few people. So, but yeah, it is a concern of what about the day that I decide I've had enough. But I don't have a reason to say that yet. So we'll have to figure it out one day, but today's not that day. Good question though. I ask myself sometimes.
Each year or just once in a while?
Every now and then, you know, every now and then something will happen. I'm like, damn this. But yeah, it's an excellent question. I don't know the answer.
So the
my partner's in the audience. She asked the same thing, but she's also one of the people that knows how to get in.
So currently, though, it's just you, right, on the team. You're the only person.
Pretty much, yeah. Again, my partner does help out with some stuff on the day. If she sees a bug, particularly a front end bug that I've not been able to fix, she'll jump in and do it. And she's helped and contributed along the way. But she has her own full-time gig and her own hands full. So for the most part, it's me.
Fair enough. That's cool. That means all the responsibility and all the glory.
That's right. And look, honestly, it's been a very interesting thing to be associated with. Again, as a consultant, particularly now, like as a freelance consultant, it opens a lot of doors. You know, the sorts of people that I will, you know, be involved in a conversation with, you know, CEOs of companies. You know, I've had meetings in the CEO and it's getting a little bit like, who the hell are you to tell us what to do? And then I see there's a picture of a boat on their wall and I'm like, oh, do you sail? And they, yes. I'm like, well, I do this. And they're like, oh, instantly I've got attention. Like, it's instant credibility. So it's certainly served me well.
That's very cool. I mean, the CYC is a very prestigious club as well.
Yes.
And yeah, it's got a nice, you know, everything's nice about it in terms of the setup and everything else, and it's got you know, room for expensive boats and all those sorts of things added to be moored, and you membership, etc. So it's definitely a good.
It is a lovely spot. Yeah, and it's funny. Like, one year I actually went, everything's under control. I'm totally on top of everything. I'm going to go down to the club and actually get out and see the start of it. Yeah. And then some database index played up about 3 hours before the race, and I found myself in the CEO's office just sweating. And it's one of those things, like, there's no good way of, you know, and we'll talk about it. There's really no good way of predicting some of the things. Like, something can work completely fine year after year, and then one race that just tips the database index over the edge, and all of a sudden you need to re-optimize your queries. But you do not see that until race day. just with the data that's coming in and what it's having to do. So you do have to think on your feet a lot. I guess that we'll get into that.
Well, that sounds like a good segue to that as well. So, maybe do you want to run us through the architecture from
Yeah. So yeah, I've done a sort of very simple architecture diagram of the sort of various evolutions and iterations. So again, this is something I've been involved in for 23 years. And like you said, the club is very prestigious, the race is very prestigious, but it's not the sort of thing where there's enough money floating around that they could afford a big team to redevelop software every year. So essentially it's me and every year trying to improve things a little bit. Like there's never been, we've done, and we'll talk about it, a couple of sort of redesigns and rebuilds of some pieces of it. But some years it's like we just need to maintain it this year. Some years it's like, okay, all the boards allocated some budget to redesign the website. But it's never been the sort of thing where we could just throw a team at rebuilding everything from scratch. So it has been an evolution, which is interesting in that you sort of have to live with the consequences of your decisions for a long, long time sometimes. So, which is part of the fun. So I will pull up. I've just got a Miro board with some of the iterations, and while I'm looking at this, I can't see you. So please, James, interrupt me.
no worries.
Up.
Oh, do you want to show the tracker as well?
Oh yeah, I can do that. Yes. Let me
There's like kind of a CMS kind of thing in it, and then there's the race tracker. That's the main thing, I guess.
Yeah. Look, I'll show you. Yeah. So this is the site. This is the tracker. This is where most people spend their time. So you can see all of the boats on there. This is wind. This is wind forecast data from the BOM. And we've got all of the boats, and we can kind of see at this point in the race, which is race time's funny. This is 2 days, 18 hours, and 40 minutes into the race. So you can see a boat, how fast they're going, their direction, how far to the leader they're in, and then all the categories that they're in and where they sit in that category. So that's the tracker, and we can look at that over time. We can, so that's the tracker. The site, for the most part, is a news site. We've got a sort of mini tracker on the homepage. There's no boats on at the moment because the race isn't running. We've got standings and results. You can kind of see at the final time, there's the standings, again, across all of the divisions. So line honors is first over the line. And then we've got all the different categories and divisions. Other than that, it's a fairly standard content website with a clock that shows the correct time.
We've got a screen,
which is important. Important. So I'll jump into the Miro board with some architecture. And again, this is very lightweight, just to kind of talk in big pictures about the thing. So iteration 1, which is kind of where I inherited it. In the style in sort of early 2000s was everyone built their own CMS for everything they built. So this was an in-house site that was classic ASP, so pre.NET, and it was called the race management system, and it was the front end of the website and the content management system and all of the yacht management system, plus all of the, what we call time points, which is the state of the race at various times. So it was all in this one classic ASP code base with the SQL Server database. Now, they had multiple races, and each one of those races was a separate instance of the code base with some of the logos and art change, and a separate instance of the SQL Server database. And when I joined, there were 2, but there was plans for 3 more. So Actually, I'll get into that. So yes, website, CMS, race management was all into this, and there were multiple instances of all of it. And then we had some other stuff. We had incoming GPS messages came in on FTP, and then we had just a scheduled task to read those things in. And the race processor, when I joined the sort of the year before, they actually planned to update the standings throughout the race in a big Excel spreadsheet, and then I think a COM component on the server to read that. And of course, that locked and completely fell over under load. So one of the first things I had to do was build the first cut of the race processor. And my brief was, you can use any technology you like. And I said, excellent, I want to use C#. And they went, not .NET, none of us here know that. How about VB6 and stored procedures? Ooh. So any technology I wanted turned into VB6, a VB script to kick it off, and then a whole lot of stored procedures. And that's the race processor. And you'll see this actually still exists. So that was kind of iteration one. And obviously there were a bunch of problems with that. The first one I had to tackle was the fact that I was going to have multiple instances of everything. So for iteration,
just before we move on, we got a question. How do you manage provisioning the extra capacity during the spikes for this?
Yes, excellent question. So in the year 2002, for many years after that, really, provisioning extra server load was months of project management and contracts with enterprise hosting companies, and then weeks of them racking and cabling servers and provisioning them, and eventually giving stuff to me. But essentially, so yes, it took months and months and months of negotiation to get servers. We used Web Central back in the day, if anyone remembers Web Central, and then moved to some other sort of enterprise hosting companies. And I was trying to remember this yesterday, the app that I started to use to actually copy code across. There was some kind of Windows version of rsync, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was called, but I used that and just network shares with shadow passwords across all of the machines to do it. Mostly, I think once I tried domain joining them, but yeah, it was literally just file copy, FTP and file copy to get the stuff across. Robocopy it was. Yes. You are right. Thank you. The Robocopy. There was another one I tried at some point after that, but yes, initially it was Robocopy for several years. There was something else that came later that was a little faster, but yes, there was definitely Robocopy. That was definitely in the mix. So move on to iteration 2. Sorry, is there other questions?
One other question. So how did the FTP work? Where was the data coming from that was FTP?
So yes. So initially, this is kind of a segue jumping forward into the future a little bit. The initial data came from, and I cannot remember the name of the company, but the GPS units that we used, the satellite was called Inmarsat. And this is ancient history, so I don't remember all of the details, but essentially they were a big, bulky unit that were designed to track fleets of trucks. And they had to be wired into the mains on the boat. And we would actually put them on like a gimbal, because the satellite was at a 22-degree orbit for this, which is fine if you're tracking fleets of trucks, because trucks typically don't do that all of the time. So there were lots of instances where we would just get no data for a boat for a while because it was getting thrown about by the waves, and the ping would go that way and the satellite was over there. So there was a lot of code to figure out, you were here, and if you were here, you were probably going there. And we think you were going about, well, we know you were going at this speed last time we saw you, therefore you are probably here now. So there's a lot of kind of logic and some algorithm stuff in there around predicting where someone should be if their GPS data was missing, and therefore how far they've got to go and when we think they're going to win. That stuff is, I'm not going to touch on too deeply, because I did kind of clear this with the yacht club around what and like the algorithm of how that works. I'm not going to touch. That's the IP that I'm not going to talk about. But you know, the GPS units that we had were very unreliable. So anyway, they would hit the satellite. That would then get relayed back to a base station. I don't remember where the first one was, and then they would FTP that to us, and then I would read that data in and put it in the database to then process it. Now, along the way,
each boat FTP, like FTP.
No. So the boat would ping the satellite. So it would send off a message saying, I'm transponder ID, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I took a reading at this time, and my coordinates are this, and my current speed and heading are this. And it would send that to a satellite.
Yep.
And then the satellite would relay it to a ground station, which would relay it to their servers in a data center, and they would FTP that to us. So I would read the GPS. I think at that point it was XML, but it could have been some packed text format. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. And then we would parse out, I think it was actually a big pipe separated string. And so we would look at, the first segment was the tracker ID, and we would have in our race management system, this boat is this tracker ID. So we would read that data in and insert it and go, okay, well, if it's tracker ID 1, 2, 3, 4, that's, wild oats. And so at this time, they were in this place, with this speed and heading. There's a later iteration where we changed transponder provider to a company called Yellow Brick, who do a lot of yacht races. They're designed for marine purposes, and they have a lot more satellites, and they are a lot more reliable. So, because the other thing was, these old transponders, they actually were mains powered, or 12 volt or 24 volt powered. So they would have to be wired in on the boat. And what would happen in the early days, a lot of the skippers of these boats didn't want people on the internet knowing where they were, because competitive advantage. So people would just pull the wires. And just disrupt it, so they would disappear, so that nobody would knew where they were. Now they'll rely on it, and they use our data to kind of put on their own website and sponsors to see it. So they're a lot more interested in being seen now. But the transponder units that we have are weather sealed with batteries and backup batteries and multiple satellites, and missing data is a lot less now. But these units were designed for trucks.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
do they pay for it themselves, or is it paid by the club?
It's paid for by the club. In the early days, they had an idea that some of the boat owners, particularly of the club, would pay to lease their own units, so they could kind of have personalized trackers, but that didn't go anywhere. So basically the club leases the transponders, and then goes and fits them to all the boats the day before the race.
Oh, cool.
So the newer ones, and you'll see in one of the later iterations, we've ditched the sort of Windows FTP, and I've got a service, and again, we'll get to it, where they just, as they get data in, they ping an HTTP endpoint with a JSON payload, and I read that in and process it. So it's a lot more immediate.
Yes, in 26 years or whatever, 23 years. Yes.
JSON got invented. The thing is, we don't act on, even though we can get the data more immediately, we still don't, because they do charge us a lot of money. And last year, the 80th year, we had 180 boats in the race. So if we were to get those pings every 10 seconds across 180 boats across a week of racing, it starts to add up. So the other thing that was decided very early is, we don't want the standings to be massively fluctuational. So we will kind of publish a standings every 10 minutes. And that's stuck. So it's not it's not anywhere a kind of near real-time experience, because it's once we've published it, that's kind of what we're replicating. Is it used to be the club would come up with standings and they would go and pin it to a notice board, and then the media could go and read that notice board. So we've kind of kept that same vibe, if you like, of we are publishing the standings every 10 minutes for people to read off. So we're not, it would cost us a lot to do immediate data, so events like the America's Cup, which is a very high-speed yacht race, but it's in a very small circuit, and they have transponders pinging the whole time, and you can get, and I despise the term real time, but I'm going to say it, because there's no such thing. There's only acceptable degrees of latency. But you can see, they call it like a virtual thing, and you can kind of see where the boats are the whole time. And we just don't do that because we're out at sea for days, and it's just not really feasible to do that. More feasible now, but it's not that much changes in a multi-day yacht race out at sea that a 10-minute granularity isn't fine for. So yes, so iteration 2, I spent a whole lot of time merging 3 databases together to get all of the boats, and that's it's a good thing I like SQL, and making this one thing that then became domain aware to figure out the context of the site you were looking at. We scaled it by just robocopying across the cluster. We brought in this VB6 and stored procedure processing engine. And the other thing that we started to do was pulling in that BOM weather that I showed you, which there's a format called GRIB. Actually, James, do you know about GRIB files? You would see this if you use like Expedition or something like that, or have you not come across this?
Not really. It sounds vaguely familiar, but I haven't used them. So
it's a very tightly packed data format designed by meteorologists who know enough sea to be dangerous. And essentially it's a file format that has kind of or has data in a matrix, and it'll have a header that says I'm this coordinate to this coordinate by 10-meter increments, and then it will kind of go number, and it'll say, like, if you know that you've got, say, it's a 10 by 10 matrix, and it's much bigger than that. But once you kind of get to 10 things, then you go, okay, now we're on the next line. You kind of read in this stream of data and then lay it into a grid. And so we'll pull in stuff that's like the horizontal wind forecast and the vertical wind forecast, and then you kind of put that together to figure out the wind direction. But whenever you see a weather chart with wind prediction or sea swells or heat or anything like that, it's published by the Bureau in this data format. So I had to learn that and read that, and it was at that point a scheduled task with a VB script to read that in and stick it in the database. That was iteration 2. So this is still very early on. This is 2003 era. Funny story about this, and I'm going to jump in with, as I remember it, some funny stories around this stage. One particularly funny thing was when I was building this race processor, and ancient history. I have a music degree. When I was in high school, I was, or still am a musician, but when I was in high school, I decided that I was going to pursue music and go and get a music degree. And when I was in, I think, year 10, I had a student maths teacher, and he was teaching us trigonometry, and he had this fictional example of you're looking at a river and there's 2 boats on the river, and you need to figure out how far apart they are. And you can do that by measuring the angle of the one boat to the other. And me, being a smartass, said, when am I ever going to need this in my life? And he had to admit that I will never need this in my life. And at that point, I switched off, and I was terrible. Fast forward many years, and it's about 3 a.m, and I'm on crunch mode, ready to get this thing for the first race. And I'm Googling high school trigonometry, feeling very silly. So study math. So yes, that was a funny story. yeah, I'll get to the other funny story about this iteration in a moment. So yeah, that was iteration 2. So that's still fairly early. That's sort of 2003. Iteration 3 was sort of once I'd sort of had this freelance and had a little more freedom. It largely stayed the same for a while because it was still sort of in maintenance mode. And it was also around the time of the GFC, so there wasn't a lot of money to be spent on anything.
Mm.
But one of the things that I realized to scale it was, so the original tracker was built in Flash, and Flash was very good for it was like the best way in the early 2000s to do interactive graphicsy type things. But Flash wasn't actually very good at maths. It had a whole bunch of just maths issues that it was very, very bad at. So if you're building this with, say, Google Earth or Google Maps, you would expect that what you would just do is have some sort of JSON, or back in the day we used XML, feed of here's all the yachts and what their coordinates are, and then you could plot that on the map. You couldn't do that with the original tracker written in Flash. They had actually drawn their own base map. And you could zoom and move the map around. We couldn't say here are the coordinates and have Flash figure out where to plot those on the viewport. It couldn't do that level of maths, which, given that it was kind of essentially a game and interactive engine, was a bit terrible. So what we actually had to do was it would call back to the server with, hey, I can see from here to here. Tell me where to put the boats in kind of XY rather than lat and long. So every time you zoomed or panned or moved the tracker, that was a server-side call that called a stored procedure to hit the database, the ever-growing database of coordinate data. It did not scale very well at all. And it was one of the real downfalls of this site. The other real downfall of this site was SQL connections that never got closed and disposed.
Right.
I spent many hours cleaning up after the developers before me, closing those connections that worked fine in development, did not survive production for long at all. I got very good at the SQL Server profiler and other sort of instrumentation to kind of find open connections and kill runaway SPIDs. So anyway, this was still Flash, and I couldn't change the fact that Flash was bad at maths. But what I did realize was .NET was a lot faster than classic ASP, and the actual yacht data didn't change all that much. So I built a small .NET service which would cache just in memory the current status of the yachts, and then do that kind of coordinate to XY maths in memory and return the XML. And so this iteration scaled a lot better than the classic ASP one that was kind of doing that in a stored procedure, because it literally was sending XYs to a stored procedure, which was hitting that. So this is when I started to really be able to think about scale. And that sort of was the first time that I think C# showed up in this code base. It may have showed up doing the weather import around that time, but I can't exactly remember. But yeah, this was a big piece, was if I can't get Flash to do maths, at least I can cache some data. And my caching journey with this began. And certainly some of the lessons I've learned in this is cache is excellent, but managing multi-levels of cache with different expirations can, cause all sorts of fun and gremlins and issues. So anyway, that was iteration 3. Oh, spoiler. All right, so iteration 4 was about 2011, 2012, when it was decided, look, the current design is 10 years old, and we embarked on a very long project to rebuild not only the race websites, but the club website and a whole bunch of stuff. And I sort of went CMS shopping and landed on Umbraco, which at the time probably still is probably the best .NET CMS, I think. And I did some prototyping and testing, and I went, this is really, really, really fast. And I don't know if anyone's used Umbraco. It was very fast because what it did, it sort of had the traditional database schema where you would say, okay, well, this document type has these fields are of this type. So a version of the document is going to have these values, which are these fields, and your standard sort of entity attribute value schema thing. What it did is when you published it, it created an XML representation of that. And stored it in a database table, and also kept in memory a big XML representation of all of your published content, which is great. And it was very, very, very fast until you put 15 years worth of documents in it and you have tens of thousands of nodes. And then it became very, very not fast. But that's one of the things you've discovered once you've imported, 10 years worth of content into a CMS. So that was fun. What Umbraco did have was an implementation of the Lucene search engine project it was ported from Java. And they had embedded that into Umbraco, and what it let you do was build your own indexes. So it would index everything in Lucene for fast searching, but also you could use that API in the front end web templates, and then you could add extra fields and properties to that index. So that was how you optimized Umbraco with tens of thousands of nodes. I got very deep into the internals of Umbraco for a while. But yes, it did not fare well under load and had to do a lot of tweaking to get that up. So at that point, and this is not all the same year, but it's roughly around the same time, Umbraco replaced the website and the CMS. I still had the feed service providing data feeds. Around this time, we changed GPS providers. So I built this incoming position service that would take a JSON ping. The classic ASP race management system stuck around because that's how they actually managed the boats. What I needed to do then was keep those things in sync. So there was a yacht sync service. Basically, when something was updated in the race management system, I had a Windows service running with Top Shelf, if anyone remembers Top Shelf. That was old school alt.NET. It was the mass transit team built a library to very easily let you build Windows services that you could debug just as a standard exe, because registering and debugging Windows services was awful. So I was a big fan of Top Shelf, and I started to move a lot of things to it. So the weather service at some point became a .NET thing and used Top Shelf, so I can install a bunch of Windows services. Around this time as well, I went away from FTP and classic ASP files to a web server and brought in Octopus Deploy, which made things a whole lot easier to iterate. And again, with Windows services, I could, compile it on my TeamCity server and hit go on Octopus, and it would just deploy and configure. So deploying this became a lot easier, which meant scaling up became a lot quicker because I wasn't manually copying files around and worrying about robocopy. So I just used Octopus Deploy. At this point also, I replaced the Flash tracker with Google Maps and wrote a Google Maps based engine, which was one of the first sporting events probably to use Google Maps as well. So it did that, and then it would then call the feed service directly with, hey, give me coordinates rather than XY. So all of a sudden that started to scale a whole lot better. With this yacht sync service as well, this was fairly generic. It could sync a whole bunch of things. No, it was me. This would sync a whole lot of things. And what I did was, this was classic ASP, so there was no way to put hooks to do events or anything like that in. So I had a system of triggers I found a generic way that I could write a trigger that would take all of the change. When you updated a row in SQL Server, you would get all of the changed values. And I wrote a way that would do a for XML query and actually spit a XML document of all of the changed properties into a table, and then this Yacht Sync service would take that and push it into Umbraco via a HTTP API. So I was kind of proud of that one, because all of a sudden I've got my race management split from my content management. So this kept it all in sync, except when it died.
One quick question we've got here from Graham. So it's about the VB script. So you wrote VBS script to process the weather data. Can you describe that, e.g. why a scripting language was a good tool for the job?
It wasn't. It was what I had at the time. Yeah, it was pretty terrible. And actually, I think I can't remember exactly when that came in, and I may have inherited it. And I also think that it was wrong. They'd misinterpreted the file. So I don't remember exactly when I brought it into .NET, but I had to relearn that file format and actually compare it with the arrows and lines on the BOM site to actually get it right. So C# was a much nicer environment to write that in. I think VB scripts is just what I was allowed to use in the first time. So yeah, sometimes it's not the right tool for the job. It's just the tool you have in your hand. So yeah, that was iteration 4. But yeah, that helped scale a lot better because yeah, I could write a JavaScript tracker and put stuff on Google Maps. That worked really well for a little while until Google changed their terms of service and didn't allow you to do things like that with the Google Maps API. But because I had signed up for an API key before they asked for permission to send you an email, they did tell me that I wasn't allowed to hit their API with that much traffic. I found that out on Boxing Day one morning when the map stopped loading. So for that year, what I did was I signed up for about 15 different accounts and just rotated the API keys. Like I said, this job is all about thinking under pressure, under absolute pressure, because nobody is coming to help. And you can't ring Google on Boxing Day and say, hey, can you give us a break here? So this has been well and truly MacGyvered along the way. But I will get into maps at some point. I think I've missed an iteration here. I think I missed my numbering. Yes, I did. So iteration 6 was when I discovered AWS, or was allowed to use it because our enterprise hosting contract had run out. And this was a little bit of a game changer because I didn't need to be involved in multi-week conversations with hosting providers and pay extra for project managers. And it also allowed us to really cut our costs. Cloud isn't about scaling up. Cloud is about scaling down. We had a very, very predictable load, but we would typically negotiate a hosting contract where they would sting us for the absolute peak and then use that to set the base rate for the rest of the year. Cloud let us, AWS let us run on much smaller instances. And because our traffic was super predictable, I could just spin up servers, literally Christmas Day and spin that up. The other absolute game changer was CloudFront. CloudFront sort of took this from a 10 server operation to a 2 or 3 server operation, because most of the time this data, like the website didn't change. And at this point, I'm not using Flash to host the clock. I'm using some JavaScript stuff and client side. So the HTML could be cached really, really, really well. And also a lot of the feeds could be cached really, really well because, like I said, we're only publishing results every 10 minutes. So putting CloudFront in front of a lot of things really, really, really helped scale and keep costs down. So I'm a huge, huge fan of CDNs and have been for a very, very long time. So that was probably the biggest change here, was when I was allowed to unleash my free will on AWS and put CloudFront in there. That was that was massive, and it was also great because it brought a lot of it into our own hands. You know, we weren't negotiating with hosting companies to do it. It was just, okay, it's Christmas Eve, I'm going to spin up some boxes. And again, because I had Octopus deploy, it was very easy to configure those machines and then just hit a button and deploy to them. So that was a bit of a game changer. Which leads me to, so that kind of stuck around like that for quite a while. Again, we had a few quiet years where we're really just in maintenance mode. And then a big change came along in, I think, 2018. I had been doing a lot of work with .NET Core and containers. I'd sort of left consulting, left enterprise land for a while, and was back on the tools in a startup and sort of deep in containers and .NET Core, really back on the tools. And the club called me because they wanted to introduce a new site. They run a series of, you probably know about this, James, the Blue Water Point Score, which is a series of smaller races in spring and summer. And they wanted to build a site around that basically looked the same as the race sites, but one site would have multiple races because they would do a race every 2 weeks. And I thought this was a good opportunity to, because we didn't know if this site would stick around, this was a good opportunity to prototype and spike some new architecture. So what I did was built a new site on top of, at the time it was .NET Core 2 or 3, I don't remember, on Docker and ECS. And I used Umbraco as a headless CMS because we had a lot of problems with the template rendering in Umbraco. Like it hurt scaling a lot. And like I said, there was this whole Lucene index thing in there, which I'd put so many custom extensions and events and hooks into that I couldn't actually build the site from scratch. If I'd lost my Lucene index files, I was actually screwed. I had to back those things up religiously because I couldn't actually rebuild them without just hanging the server for 7 days because I just customized Lucene so much to try to eke some performance out of it. And at this point, Umbraco really had broken their upgrade path as well. So getting beyond the version I was on wasn't really possible. So I needed a way out of hosting on Umbraco. So what I did was Umbraco had a REST API for their content. So what I did was prototype this very small site, which at the time, was only for 2 races. And we set up a new sort of parent node in Umbraco. And when the site started up, it would read all of the content out of the REST API on Umbraco, keep it all in memory, and use the same sort of template, but port it over to ASP.NET Core, CSHTML, and spun up this Blue Water Point Score site, and then embedded the JavaScript tracker to hit the feed service and blah 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 as an experiment, and it worked really, really well for the first few races of that series, which was late 2018. Which then brings me to the next iteration, which was in 2019, we allocated a bunch of budget to do a bunch of work. And I basically containerized all of the things and took my headless CMS concept and really rolled it out. So I'd sort of proven it as a case study, but the more content got added to it, the longer it would take for that site to start up. So that wasn't going to last. So what I did, I took a few months in 2019 to re-engineer a bunch of things and basically scrapped the Umbraco templating engine for the website and built a new race site on .NET Core. At that point, it was probably still 3 or 3.1, and hosted it on ECS. But what I realized was reading all of the content in from Umbraco's REST API wasn't going to scale or be fast. So what I did was built essentially a content cache as a .NET app on top of Postgres. And Postgres is an interesting beast. I don't know if anyone's played with Martin from Jeremy. Wrote Structure Map. Lost his name.
Am I in the chat?
I will
Otherwise, don't worry. Oh.
I will find it.
Jeremy Miller?
Sorry?
Jeremy Miller?
Yes, Jeremy Miller, of course. Sorry. Jeremy Miller wrote this excellent sort of ORM called Martin, which was a .NET document store API built on top of Postgres. It was a replacement for RavenDB. Basically, he had a lot of problems in production with RavenDB, and so he decided to build his own content store API using Postgres. And he Googled what's the natural predator of a raven and found this thing called a martin, which is like this fox kind of creature. And it's brilliant. It lets you, it's a document store API for .NET, and it stores JSON inside of Postgres with sort of ID and document type, and then you can say get me this ID, and then it rehydrates it, deserializes it, and rehydrates it to a .NET object. And it's fantastic and really easy. What's brilliant about it, though, is it will let you specify a property on the class that you want to store and rehydrate. You can say, I've got a document, like a Umbraco document that I'm storing, and I say I care about the slug, for example, of that piece of content. You say duplicate this in a table, and it does. So when it creates the table, it goes, okay, well, this is your ID, and this your .NET type that it's serialized as, and here's the JSON blob. But also here's the slug in a new column that's indexed. So if you want to find something by slug, it will use the index to find that row and then use the JSON from that row to hydrate as an object. So it's really fast. And the other thing that Postgres does very, very well is full text search. So I've got now this content service that basically, when you publish a document in Umbraco, I've got a webhook that hits the content service and say, hey, I've just published document ID 1234. My content service will go fetch that, do some normalizing and cleaning up the data, because again, at this point, I've got many, many years of data in Umbraco, cleans it up, stores it in Postgres with a very searchable, very indexed API that makes it very, very fast. So now my race sites, which are .NET Core, can pull from the feed service and the content service and assemble all of the pages. And it worked really, really well. And the best thing is it let me kill all the custom Lucene indexes in Umbraco, which actually let me then redeploy Umbraco when I needed to. So that was a bit of a lifesaver. So this pattern of using, and I could do a whole other talk about Martin and how it works, but this let me build a very, very, very fast, very specific REST API that let me pull out content. And I could do things like get news by year, or get me children of this node, or get me all of the yachts for this race. And it was very, very fast. And then with a whole bunch of in-memory caching inside of this, it worked really, really well. And I could get race state from the feed service. And this little stack scaled really, really quite well. And I also could have search, because this will do full text search. And then CloudFront on top of it all to cache a whole bunch of it. And it started to scale really, really well. A couple of other things that happened here. I moved everything to a container that I could, pretty much. Some of the old things. Umbraco is still there as a CMS. It also let me... No, that's still stuck around. There were still a few things on the Windows server. The weather service that did the importing got removed from Windows servers and became a Docker container. Everything became here. The other little trick that I brought in around this point was I put CloudFront on top of everything, whether I really needed to cache it or not. And here's a trick that I learned I think it was the Slack API team published a talk where they talked about this, and I don't know if it's still true, but if you hit the Slack API, you hit CloudFront first. And the reason for that is, even if you have zero caching turned on in CloudFront, it handles the SSL handshake close to the consumer. So, CloudFront is globally distributed CDN. If you're in Switzerland, you hit CloudFront, you actually do the SSL handshake close to you, and it just makes everything a little bit faster. But it also gives you like DDoS protection and web application firewall rules and all sorts of stuff. So pretty much anything I build now has CloudFront at the top of it. It costs nothing really, and it gives you a whole bunch of benefits. So CloudFront's on top of everything. The other thing I did in this iteration was I'd looked at a whole bunch of different mapping providers like Mapbox and Google Maps, and all of those things charged for essentially your peak usage. Now, my usage through the year was nothing, and then I had 48 hours where I had lots, and they all wanted to sign enterprise deals based on lots, but our usage pattern was not lots. So at that point, I went diving into the world of open source map tile serving and GIS, which is a whole space that breaks my brain, but essentially cobbled together an open source PHP map server, loaded some base maps in that were open source, stuck it behind CloudFront, and that's kind of sat there and hummed along ever since. That works really, really well. So hosting my own maps.
Not like the leaflet OpenStreetView type stuff, or
Yeah, pre that, but yeah, it came from a lot of the OpenStreetMap stuff. I don't recall off the top of my head the actual thing, but yeah, the mapping world's one of those things that's gone open to very, very closed. I do need to revisit that in the somewhat near future. So yes, this era was just containerize all of the things and put it all behind CloudFront, and this scales really, really well. There are a few spots where I got bitten in this with async, and when you read, if you put, it's this common thing, like if you put .result after an async call, you could crash your process, and most people never actually see that in production. Yeah, it's true. I saw it in production. So chasing async, and at this point, I've got caching at this layer. I have caching at this layer. I have in-memory caching at this layer, and having all of these things kind of expiring at the right time, just took some juggling. All right, nearly at the current era. Oh yeah, so you'll notice a couple of things here that are not done yet. The race processor has stuck around, and a CMS upgrade has stuck around. They're my red flags. This thing still exists as VB6 and stored procedures, and it keeps me awake at night. I do have a prototype of something running. I sort of tried to do this event sourcing thing. It's a really hard problem of when one piece of data comes in and validating another, and it's sort of, I've had this thing running side by side for a while, and then some other drama will come up and it gets neglected. So this is kind of next on my list. And yeah, CMSs along the way, Umbraco just broke their upgrade path and their migration script. So I literally can't upgrade Umbraco from where I am. I've tried pulling all the data out into a new Umbraco instance. And again, just ran into all sorts of problems. I think, and I can't believe that in this day and age, I am probably going to write my own CMS again, which I don't think anyone's done in 2 decades. But I actually think that it will give us the control over this and, the sort of specific use cases, but I will get into that. But they're my kind of, you might have noticed some things are still there. All right.
We're running out of time a bit, Damien.
Yes, cool. I will be quick for the last few bits. All right. Iteration 9 was a new piece, which was called management, and it was to get rid of the classic ASP code that had now been kicking around for 20 years. So that's a rebuild of the race management system in Vue and whatever latest version of .NET. Every time I sort of do something, I'll upgrade to the latest version of .NET. That let me then kill the horrible Windows service that kind of kept everything in sync, because I could start to then use some messaging to say, hey, this thing has changed. Go update things where you need to. The messaging topic is a talk for another day. I would like to come back and talk about messaging because I'm going to release some stuff around that. So that was that one, but that simplified a lot of stuff because now we've got a modern stack to actually. The sort of old race management system was the most hideous, clunky UX, and people would go, "Can we just add this feature in there?" I'm like, "Absolutely not. It's like 1,000 lines of classic ASP. I'm not touching it."
Yeah.
So that was that one, which kind of brings us to last year, which is when we took
Do you
on.
want to make it a bit bigger, Damien? Just zoom in.
Sorry? Yeah, cool. Yeah, of course. So this takes us to last year, where we rebuilt the website. And for the first time, it's not on a Microsoft stack. It's on Astro, which is a JavaScript web sort of templating framework. Designed for static websites, but you can't do this as a static website because they have 30,000 documents based on many years, and changing the state of the site would like an hour-long republish. But it does do server-side calls, and it's running on Node. The reason for that is I involved a designer who said, "Hey, I can do a lot of the front end as well." And to sort of templatize his front end build, he's like, "Well, look, I'm really comfortable with Astro. I'll build that." And then I looked at what he did and went, "This is fantastic. I would be really silly to pull all of your templated code out of Astro and then port it to .NET just because I know it better." So yeah, this race just gone, we went live with this Astro and Node website, which was terrifying for me because when .NET breaks, I'm really good at fixing it. This was my first time supporting Node in production, and happy to say it went well. I just threw lots of hardware at it. I threw lots of container instances at it, and it worked. And I've got some insights now on how to optimize that. But that's kind of current state of the world. So yeah, the Node Astro thing was very interesting to work in, and a bit of a departure for me. And I think I didn't leave it on there. So yeah, that's where we're at today. And then this year, we'll hopefully finally knock over the race processor piece, and like I said, build a CMS. So that is the evolution of architecture over 23 years, which took a lot longer than I thought to talk about.
Does anyone have any questions on the architectures? Just pop it in the chat if so. So the main data is still in SQL Server for the
Yes. Yeah, and I've thought like there's no real good reason to change it. Like it's a schema that I'm pretty comfortable with. Actually, one change that I will make is once I've rebuilt the processing engine, I'll have access to a lot better events when I've actually gone, okay, this time point is published. So one of my next steps will be then to take some of that data and the query, like I've got it optimized, but it's still an 11 table join kind of thing. So I actually publish those JSON files as static JSON files and stick them in S3 because I'll know, like I'll have an event on a bus when it's changed, and I think that will buy me some more scalability as well.
That does sound like a segue into the next talk just about. Hang on, what do we got? We've got some thank yous here, and will you be doing the website for the 2032 Olympic Games?
I'll probably be doing the Rolex Sydney Hobart website in 2032. I'm not touching the Olympic Games with a 10-foot pole. I plan to be as far away from Brisbane as possible.
That's fair enough. Francis, do you want to choose one other question to ask, and then we should probably...
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. Sorry, I think I didn't realize my webcam was frozen, so I didn't know whether my mic worked. But I think one of the questions I had when you're going through, especially when you put CloudFront in there, have you had any instances of like DDoS attacks on your websites over all that time you've been in charge?
Not specifically. There was one fun time in, I want to say 2014 14, but it may have been 15, when somebody DDoSed the London Stock Exchange on the 27th of December. And at that point, the GPS data that we've got, the company was based in the UK and their processing server was in that data center. So when people tried to DDoS the London Stock Exchange, we stopped getting any GPS data for about 5 hours. Now, our system is good at going, okay, this yacht's gone missing. Let's calculate where it probably is. But it needed some piece of data to kick that, like, okay, I'm going to look at this point in time now. So that set us back. Our site just didn't update for 5 hours because the London Stock Exchange was being DDoSed. So that was fun. I've not, certainly if someone's tried to DDoS us, they've not succeeded. What I have seen is lots of bots scraping our data. And I've had some fun with them putting in some, little black holes and honeypots and stuff like that. I do see a lot of, like, caching is great when your load is predictable. Like if everyone's hitting, where are the boats right now? Caching's great, CloudFront's great. That doesn't hit any. It essentially never hits, my CPU or my database tables, which is fantastic. But when you've got a bot going through every 10 minutes for every year of every race for the last 80 years, your caching isn't going to save you at all. So you can kind of think, oh, I've got this great caching, but and again, load testing, we think everyone's going to hit the tracker and show me just now. But no, there's a lot of bots that will just because I've got an index of every 10-minute point in time of every race for, across multiple series for decades. And bots will hit that and caching will not help you. I have locked myself out with CloudFront's DDoS protection when I've tried to do load testing occasionally and forgot to turn that off. So if people are trying to DDoS it, I'm not seeing it, which is great.
Okay. I think the other question I had is, obviously you probably had a lot of dealt with a lot of issues in terms of caching, and not just caching, but having in multiple places and maybe even multiple levels of caching. So any tips and tricks for
again, just if you've got multiple levels of caching with different timeout points, you do need to realize that your potential amount of cache is the sum of all of those pieces. If you hit it exactly the right time, a 60-second cache can be a 5-minute cache. People are like, where's the data? Thankfully, I've got a little bit of leeway for when we publish stuff. Where it does fall apart, and I actually got hit with this in this last race because I had scaled up so much, and also with a lot more client-side interactive on this new site, I was hitting my feed service a lot, so I needed to scale it up. It does in-memory caching. When you do a deployment, like the more instances you have of something, if they're doing some in-memory caching, the more instances you have, when you do a deployment, that kind of, the sort of herd of elephants effect of all of your caches on all of your instances refreshing at once can take out a database just with connection load. So yes, the more memory caching you have, the smarter you have to be about deploying. And I got bitten by that one in this race because I was running more instances because I was worried about load. So there's some learnings there which is why I want to, because a lot of this data doesn't change. I can actually publish them as static data, stick it in S3, and it never has to hit a CPU cycle that I own.
Okay, yeah. I think.
Yeah, I suppose we better head on because it's getting late.
It is getting late.
For watching. So yes, thank you very much, Damien. I should mention that I reported a bug on was just deploying a fix for it at that very point. Indeed, there was like a duplicate of the 2017 record, and it just kept getting longer. 2017.
That's right. Yes, I'd forgotten that. That seems like someone. That was a fun one. Okay, so I have a pattern that I'll use where I have some in-memory cache, and I have a little library call or a little sort of method call that says, cache this with this key for this amount of time, and here is the function that you want. So essentially it was a func of t, and you say, look, I want this method call with this cache key, and if that cache key is there and valid, then you get return the method set. Otherwise, it executes func_t and sticks it in a memory cache. Works great. But for some reason, I just changed something from returning a list of t to an IEnumerable of t. And of course, IEnumerables don't get enumerated until you actually turn them into something concrete. And so the cache evaluation wasn't happening until way up the stack when I actually turned it into an array. And so I kind of got this kind of tail thing where it would get enumerated and then cached again. And so it just kept getting longer. So every time it hit, it would just get like the last lot plus one more. And I'm looking at it going, what the hell is going on here? And I was, rolling out that fix, and James was pestering me on WhatsApp.
And you already got it sorted, I think.
Yeah, I had it sorted, but like, you will not believe this one. Yeah, just, dumb stuff in the heat of the moment. That was fun.
It sounds like, yes, you've got a lot more real-time programming than most people.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I'm literally deploying, when people go, oh, don't deploy on Friday, I'm like, I deploy on Boxing Day 100 times. But it was a symptom of that, like, Boxing Day was going quite well because I had time that as I was watching this deploy to send you code samples of what I'd just done wrong. So I was actually fairly calm that day. Some days, some years have been disastrous, and, it's a stressful thing.
It's amazing you're still doing it the 23 years later as well, and it's obviously been worth it, I guess, if you still want to keep doing it, right?
Yeah, I'm strangely attached to it.
So thank you very much. We got lots of thanks in the chats as well.
Cool. I can't see the chats, but thank you, everybody.
And I should ask some questions to the audience because we've got the giveaways. It's actually quite hard to ask questions on the talk, but I'll do my best. So for the two programmable free tickets, then tell me, what were some of the biggest sort of step changes that Damien did that really changed the site over the time? So pop answers in the chat. The first good answer gets a ticket, and the second good answer gets a ticket. So big architectural changes. Francis doesn't get one, keeping VB script alive. So the positive changes, I think we're talking about, rather than Damien's to-do list.
The VB6 is the one that keeps me awake at night because I can't even compile that code anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't have that toolkit.
You just leave it on the server and it works. It keeps working. God. Yes. Oh, I think Stephen's put in the effort there. He's got CloudFront containers, Martin, and Armbreaker. That seems pretty good. So Stephen, send me an email so I remember to send you the ticket. Mr. Lord Teaspoon, you got Flash to Lord Teaspoon. Have you got another one? Otherwise, Florian's got Flash to Google Maps. Have we got any other big step changes to mention?
Getting rid of Flash was a big one.
That's pretty cool. Oh, we've got a new person in. We've got moving to AWS. How about someone who's got two changes to win? A slight delay, I think, coming through Twitch as well. Lord Teaspoon got gazumped by Stephen. All right. Otherwise, do we give it to Lord Teaspoon? Can you see the chat now, Damien? Or
no, I'm not actually logged into it. Oh, sorry, I can. There, comments. Sorry.
Yeah, just on the side. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can see it. Yes.
You can make a call for the second more difficult call. I'll hand it over to you, Damien.
mean, containers was a big change. What was the first one you gave away? Was it the CloudFront?
The Umbraco CMS, Martin. But Stephen also mentioned front-end containers, but presumably Lord Teaspoon did it at the same time.
Honestly, probably the Flash to Google Maps and then general JavaScript has been the biggest one. The other thing that we did that I didn't actually mention, that my partner did, I don't know if she's still online, she was there earlier, was used OpenGL to do a 3D tracker of the finish, where once people are in the sort of the final Derwent River final straight, we would start them reporting every minute, and it didn't contribute to the overall standings, but it meant that we could update the tracker a lot more. So those kind of really close finishes are a lot more interesting to watch, because we've got these kind of beautiful 3D renderings of boats that are actually like, tagging alongside. Oh, there she is. Yeah, Lorraine LG is in the chat. She did that, which was awesome. I'm not that good at JavaScript dev.
So Florian wins the prize, the next ticket.
Yeah, it was probably the big one of just moving off of Flash onto various JavaScript-based maps.
All right, that sounds good. So Florian, send me a meetup message with your email.
Remembering high school trigonometry. Yeah, no, that's my secret shame.
So Florian, send me a message on Meetup or email if you've got my email address. Just pop your email in it. That's great. Your partner's watching the show as well.
She's very supportive.
My son to watch it. I said it'd be an interesting show today, so we'll see. I'll ask afterwards whether I've got family in the chat as well. So there's 2 JetBrains licenses to give away. So these ones, let's see. Does anyone remember what was used for deployment for the .NET stuff? Oh yeah, looks like my son's in the chat. So what did Damien use for automating the first lot of deployments after the copy
after
file?
FTP and robocopy?
Oh,
Stephen Smith has it.
You're doing very well. All right, JetBrains license as well. Just mention it in the email as well.
Lots of this code has been written in JetBrains too. I live in Rider when I'm writing hard .NET things. Absolutely live in Rider.
Oh, very good. And one more question. Let's see. How often are the positions updated on the tracker generally throughout the course? If people don't, every 10 minutes, you won the JetBrains license. So yeah, just drop me an email on that one too, so I remember to send it to you. All right, that's all the things we have to give away. So yes, everyone was listening, which is excellent. Yes. It's good you came to L.NET at just the right time and won too, Mr. Lord Teaspoon, for your new license. All right, so thank you again, Damien, and we would definitely welcome you back for your next talk on.
Cool, I will let you know. Yes, I have things to talk about soon, but yeah, give me a couple of months.
Yes, no rush. All good, mid-year or even a little later. And yeah, if anyone's got anything they want to talk about, we have quite a surprisingly packed few months of talks planned, but there's certainly room after that. So get in touch if you've got something you want to talk about, please.
Yeah, just on that, I think maybe we have up till June potentially, so we've got already half the calendar booked. So if you want to get a talk in, you need to be quick. You need to get in there before we fill them up. So yeah, again, thanks for everyone joining today. And yeah, sorry about my webcam freezing. It seems to happen from time to time. So maybe it was a server somewhere in London that was getting DDoSed.
Yeah, DDoS.
You never know.
the structure.
never know. Yeah, we will. I think. I think.
So that's,
I know Damien wanted to have one in person, but for this one, but I think maybe on hindsight it was good thing that we didn't.
I ended up not in Sydney. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, but yeah, I think the plan is maybe in March. I think
right.
one of the Mantle group, someone in Mantle group wants to do a talk, so it just makes sense for us to do the in-person one in March. But yeah. Yeah, if that falls through, we'll try and find an alternative venue. But yeah, we are going to have one, I think, soon. Next month, I think. Yeah, our guest speaker is in the UK, so I don't think we can do an in-person one then. But yeah, March seems to be the one. Yeah.
Yeah, so probably
next one is on a yacht.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Everyone go, but yes, thank you Ian for coming, and very much thank you Damien for answering all our questions and showing us through this 23 years of live coding and
living on the edge. Yeah, thank you so much. It's it was fun to chat about it. So no, I'm glad we caught up in December, and yeah, no, it was really fun. So to jump in again soon.
Pleasure. All right, we'll catch you all later, everyone, and ciao. See you.
All right, have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.